Welcome back to the news from Kazakhstan. I'm Askar Sheraliyev, and these are the top stories. The new health minister is appointed in Kazakhstan, replacing Jaksılık Doskaliyev. Global Witness discusses the latest multi-billion deal between the copper giant Kazakhmys and Fund Samruk-Kazana. The issue of human rights violations in Kazakhstan is raised at the OSCE Human Dimension Conference in Poland. The scandal linked to healthcare minister Jaksılık Doskaliyev is nearing its conclusion, as the official was formally replaced on Friday by a presidential decree. This is seen by observers as the official recognition of the minister's guilt. Coincidentally, a drawing title, "The Criminal Doctor," was chosen as the winner of the anti-corruption poster competition, which also took place on Friday. The anti-corruption poster with a signed criminal doctor was the winner of the recent state contest. In the light of the fresh scandal linked to the health minister Doskaliyev, guests of the exhibition took this as inevitable continuation of the so-called doctor's case. The jury chairman, who is also the main anti-corruption fighter in the ruling party, claims that the poster's choice is purely coincidental, while Doskaliyev's dismissal from his post is a decision made in the president's administration. The appointment of new ministers shows that the leadership of the country supports the arguments of the financial police. Further events will develop in accordance with the legislation. In the meantime, the charges against the main defendant of the infamous case have yet to be pressed. The 10-day arrest of Doskaliyev expires on October 12th, said his lawyer Robert Shmal. At the same time, the public already sees Shmal's client as an obvious corrupt official, thanks to the efforts of the financial police. I will ask the Prosecutor General to review all case materials and decide whether it was instigated legally or not, both in relation to the accusations of the abuse of power and the supported bribery in the form of apartments. The cabinet members are still silent over the matter. The government's most recent recruit, the Education Minister Bakhitjan Jumagulov, literally lost his speech after being asked about the issue. Do you believe that Doskaliyev has committed a crime? After Doskaliyev arrest, the cabinet holds all their sessions behind the closed doors. Even the presentation of the new health minister Solidat Kairbekova was held without the press, which is a precedent, unlike new calls for the resignation of Prime Minister Karim Masimov. After all, Doskaliyev was already the third member of Masimov's team accused of corruption. Speaking on the matter, members of the ruling party note that currently there are no mechanisms for the resignation of high-ranking state servants. Thus, the only way to counteract the irresponsible officials is through various drawing contests. Rumors of high-profile resignations continue to appear in Kazakhstan's internet publications. Portal Respublika reported that the Prosecutor General Kairat Mami and Vice Prime Minister Umirzak Shukeyev were supposedly placed under house arrest on Friday evening. Respublika claims to receive the information from a source within the Kazakh government. In turn, the cabinet's press service casts doubts on the possible resignation of Umirzak Shukeyev. Duman Hamid, the deputy head of the press service, told the publication that the vice premier was still at work on Friday and no one has dismissed him. The information over the house arrest of Kairat Mami has not been confirmed as well. We will continue to monitor this development and bring you the latest updates as we get them. International NGO Global Witness is trying to find out who actually controls the Kazakhmys corporation. In Friday's press release, the British experts claimed that the recent deal to sell the Kazakh government 11% of Kazakhmys shares will likely lead to new risks for the company's investors. The press release also hints that the deal was actually forced by President Nazarbayev. It is necessary to find out why Mr. Kim decided to sell his shares to the government at this moment. The minority shareholders of Kazakhmys PLC need to know whether the deal was done for a legitimate commercial reason or due to the pressure from the government or the President of Kazakhstan. As a result of the sale, Kim's total share in the company dropped to 27.9% and the state share rose to 26%. Thus, the Kazakh government is now very close to owning the major stake in the company. According to the analyst of the Political Decisions Institute, Maxim Kaznachev, the questions raised by the British Global Witness should have been addressed 5 years ago when Kazakhmys entered the London Stock Exchange. The expert believes that the Global Witness press release can damage the corporation's credibility, adversely affecting the stock price. Kaznachev believes that this could be the plotting of the Kazakh government to increase its stake in Kazakhmys corporation. 11% of shares in the total stake will give Kazakh government 26%, making it a blocking shareholder. 51% is needed to gain the complete control over the company. But in light of the possible Hong Kong IPO, the ownership structure might change drastically, leaving the required 51% to the state. Representatives of the Oil and Gas Ministry attacked the oil producers at the Kyogi 2010 forum, harshly criticizing and blaming them for non-compliance with the domestic content program. The state blacklist already includes 59 companies which were sent the warnings of the possible contract termination. Back in May, officials tightened the regulations for the subsoil users to force them conduct procurements with the local producers in mind. Apparently, though, the government failed to set up a proper system for the monitoring of the compliance with the domestic content program. Participants of the international conference Kyogi discussed the issue of the Kazakh participation in the oil and gas industry. Over the last 6 months, 59 companies ended up on the blacklist of the Oil and Gas Ministry due to the failure to submit their procurement reports. The ministry complains that it is extremely hard to make way for the domestic products. Since May 5th, when the rules were first introduced, only a couple of transactions were carried out in accordance with the regulations. By the end of the year, many of subsoil users will face problems of failing to report their contractual obligations. The ministry will respond quite harshly. Nevertheless, experts believe that the president's undertaking to make companies make procurements from domestic producers at set rates has failed. Currently, oil and mining enterprises buy $18 billion worth of goods and services annually. Almost half of that is done by foreign investors. Foreign companies are actively ousting domestic ones from the market, giving contracts to their own affiliates. In turn, foreign experts believe that investors are willing to pay by the rules. However, these rules have to be clearly formulated first.
They all want to be good citizens, and they all do want to promote local content. And, there are some practical difficulties to doing that. And there is, a time period that's required for people to be able to meet some of the, especially some of the technical difficulties that are required.
The Oil and Gas Ministry, however, continues to push forward with its plan, which sees officials willing to break some of the mining contracts. The government maintains a tough position that implies that if goods are produced locally, then companies consider it to be a domestic one. In these conditions, it is extremely hard to predict what will be the consequences of policies like this. The movement of goods between the countries of the customs union was discussed on Friday at the bilateral meeting of Russian and Kazakh customs services. The foreign delegation learned about the operation at the Alatau customs post Almaty car terminal, as well as the new program to automate the control of the incoming cargoes. The next report has more. You can watch, but you can't ask. Russian customs officials warned beforehand that journalists are allowed to be present during the visit, but they can't ask any questions. Apparently, some aspects of the interaction between Russian and Kazakh customs must be kept secret. Alternatively, the Kazakh side could have decided to act safe, whereas the Russian delegation demonstrated its foremost openness. One of our current main goals is to work out the information exchange in different directions. We have to connect our information systems, which is not an easy issue, although quite achievable. The customs union entered its second practical stage in July of this year. On paper, the agreements over rates and list of goods subject for the special certification was developed back in January. Now the time has come for a technical part, for instance, for the cargo security system to be brought to the common denominator. If we look at advantages and disadvantages of our union for Russia, we should understand that any integration process will always result in the fine-tuning of the general matter, accompanied by certain trade-offs for each party. During a marriage, people also settle for compromises to have a happy family. The talks that the creation of the customs alliance is not as advantageous for Kazakhstan as it is promoted by officials are still around. The most obvious shortcoming is that the country falls into the economic dependence from Russia, and that the authorities were motivated by political interests instead of economic ones while signing the agreement. Here is an e-filing. We have it listed as a lock of hinges, and the requirement is for all vehicles to have hinges like this. Thus, if the filing is broken along the way, it will be immediately noted. Yes. Whether Russia and Kazakhstan can form a happy family was discussed behind the closed doors. At the same time, it is clear that the budget of the partnership will be quite high. This particular customs point alone made the foreign trade turnover of $18.5 million in the last 6 months. In the meantime, experts note the obvious customs confusion in the country. Over 100 deeds of the United Customs Code never entered into force. While officials are seemingly fighting bureaucratic obstacles, businessmen continue to sustain losses.
Что хотели?
Хлеба. Давайте.
Asim Ranova started her business just recently, but she already knows how to warn customers about the sudden rise in prices for particular commodities. We try to warn customers even about the lightest of raises so that they won't be surprised. 99% of all negative forecasts concerning the customs union have come true. The Kazakh customs code disappeared while the new common one has still to escape the clutches of bureaucracy. More than 100 regulations designed to make life easier for the Kazakh businessmen are stuck for already a month and a half. There's no simplification at all. Instead, there are administrative delays that reflect on the cost of goods. One of the main advantages of the union, the ability of Kazakh producers to enter new markets and do business on the scale of Russia and Belarus, is still a myth, even for such lucrative field as alcohol industry. This despite domestic distilleries working at a quarter of their capacity and the readiness to ship vodka at the price 2 times cheaper than that produced in Russia. Federal obstacles are insurmountable for Kazakh spirits, all the while import is open with no restrictions. Currently, we feel a certain injustice. Our government and the Customs Union administration should take steps to unify the legal framework to introduce equal terms for Kazakh, Russian and Belarusian producers. Importers also encounter numerous problems. In anticipation of the new legislation, they are forced to file tax returns in electronic form at the integrated portal. People in the know say that half an hour is needed just to fill a single line with 50 symbols. At the same time, all complaints about technical issues remain unaddressed. We're not just waiting for something better, we actually really need to patch the legislation. Many Russian goods never reach us because people who ship cargoes here later encounter this tax reporting, which is just nonsense. Kazakh producers also have big problems working with raw materials from third countries. The skyrocketing fees force them to elevate the end prices as well. Many have already fell victims of the competition. In this situation, experts see any talks of the coming single economic space as a joke. To the other news, supporters of oppositionist Aydos Sadikov are trying to draw extra attention to the preliminary hearing of the activist case in the Supreme Court. On October 11th, judge in Astana will decide whether to review Sadikov's motion to revise his initial verdict. The ex-head of October branch of the party Azat, Aydos Sadikov, who was sentenced to 2 years for alleged hooliganism, believes that the verdict is politically motivated and insists on the new hearing. He, however, is concerned that the court didn't ask for additional case materials, those ignored during the initial trial. We want to attract maximum attention to the Supreme Court trial on October 11th because it could be the last hearing over Sadikov's case. The judge could listen to the complaints of our attorney as well as all the arguments and still reject the motion at the preliminary stage.